Hi, this is Nam from Easy Sunday Club.
Hi, this is Cathy.
And today we're going to go over why you should diversify from Etsy. Just to give some background and context for this video is for people who are either thinking of making their own Etsy site to sell their artisanal handmade goods, or they currently have an Etsy site and they are thinking of diversifying their sales channels and are thinking about starting their own e-commerce site. Just to tell you a little bit about my own experience. Cathy, what kind of made you want to make the switch to go beyond Etsy?
Well, when people first met me and they'll ask me, one of the common questions is, so do you sell your stuff on Etsy? It makes me cringe a little, to be honest. I know they mean well, but if I had only been selling my products on Etsy, I wouldn't have a business and I wouldn't be here making this video.
We were using Etsy for a while, and it's great for artists to start off on Etsy just because the barrier of entry is so low. But
yes. And what does that mean? It's easier to set up and get your thing. You can set up and get going in maybe an hour.
Yeah, and I guess the analogy that we're trying to use is that it's kind of like when you move out of your parents' house for the first time and you're renting a room, and then you grow out of that room and you kind of want your own place. And when people ask you, hey, do you still live with your parents? I.e., do you still rent a room or are on Etsy? That's the kind of cringe that makes us feel inside. And we're like, no, we have our own site and we have our own platform that we're trying to sell directly to. Is that fair?
So paying for our own website is like paying for rent and mortgage.
Yeah. So
makes us feel like an adult in the e-commerce world, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And we're breaking up this video into two parts.
Yeah.
One is just an overview of the pros and cons of Etsy versus having your own website. In the second part of the video, we're going to do a deep dive comparing the two most popular e-commerce platforms, Shopify and Squarespace.
Yep. So let's jump into it. So first slide, do not rely on Etsy. But what is Etsy? Etsy is a marketplace for handmade, vintage, and artisanal products. So when we say marketplace, it means that you can go there and there's all these other makers and people selling on there. Other marketplaces you might be familiar with are eBay or Amazon. If I were to do an analogy of the real world, then it would be kind of like a farmer's market where you go to one central place and there's all these vendors and makers selling things there. Cathy, what are some of the good things about Etsy?
You mentioned this in the beginning. It was very easy for us to set up shop when we first decided to sell my art prints online. It's a marketplace, so there's already built-in traffic and customers looking for your goods. And it's also an established marketplace. Etsy has been around for at least a decade, and the brand is well known and a lot of people shop on there without us having to bring them there ourselves.
Yeah, and to set up your first storefront, it's free. You just go in there and set up an account just like you do for any other platform. But there are some drawbacks. The first drawback is that there's limited personal branding or design. It's hard to differentiate your store and the experience that you're trying to make for your customers versus all the other makers and sellers there.
If you think about something you bought in the past from Etsy, do you remember the store name or the seller that you bought it from? Most likely, when your friend sees the thing that you purchased and they ask you where you bought it, you will say, I got it from Etsy. And that's the thing I don't want people to say when they're trying to tell others about my products.
Yeah, you want to say that they bought it from Easy Sunday Club, or you want them to say that they bought it from yourbusiness.com. Not that they bought it from Etsy, because you're just promoting Etsy and to go on Etsy to find stuff made by other people, not your stuff. Another thing is it's hard to rank and search. Now, Cathy has a data analytics and visualization background, and she can get more on what this actually means.
I'm probably not going to do a full-blown analysis, but Basically, Etsy's ranking algorithm is changing all the time. As of 2019, they are favoring postings or listings that offer free shipping. So I was forced into a corner having to offer free shipping on my products. They also encourage you to build in a couple dollars or the cost of your shipping into the price of the product, but it's just, to me, it's not enough to incentivize someone to buy. And again, as a seller, we're forced to take a cut or to absorb the cost of having to pay for shipping. That's one of the biggest changes this year that I know a lot of sellers aren't happy about, but we have no choice but to oblige.
Another thing is fees. So for each item that you post on there, it'll cost 20 cents. There's also a 5% transaction fee that Etsy keeps for each transaction on top of the credit card payment processing fee, which is 3%, as well as 25 cents per transaction. If you were having your own site, then you would pay a monthly fee, but you wouldn't have that 5% transaction fee or listing fee per item. So I think if you have a small store with not that many items, then fine, you can eat these costs, or if you don't want to deal with the admin of your own store. But as you expand, you can see how these fees could potentially add up. Also, Etsy has a program or option to add your own personal branding, and it's called Patterns, but that costs an additional $15 a month. And the capability and design is not up to the standards that you could get from an e-commerce platform.
And you lose the discoverability of the marketplace, since Pattern is not a marketplace. So you're basically just building a site off of their own standalone platform.
Yeah. So if you decide to go to Patterns, then people aren't going to be able to find your stuff through the Etsy search, right?
And to be honest, I don't know anyone who is on Pattern.
Yeah. Also, there's limitations to Etsy on what you can sell. You can only sell handmade, vintage, and artisanal goods. If you are an entrepreneur and a creative designer and you are going beyond things that you can make handmade because you want to scale, you can't sell those items on there. If you do want to sell those items, they make you go through a due diligence verification process. For example, when we started selling enamel pins and we were working with a manufacturing partner to make those, we had to submit information about our manufacturer, pictures, so that we could, so that Etsy could verify that they were a legit manufacturer that had certain fair practices. The last thing, and the biggest thing, I think, is that at the end of the day, you're at Etsy's mercy. Just like other stories that you've heard about Instagram, Facebook, Amazon, YouTube, you're at the mercy of that platform. And when they change either their focus on what they're trying to push or their terms and conditions. So for example, if Etsy wants to shut you down because they don't like the products that you're selling or the way you're selling it, then there goes your entire site and your entire funnel.
And lastly, I think Etsy has gotten more and more crowded over time. Like you said, it is limited to handmade, vintage, and artisanal goods, but I feel like in the recent year, Etsy is blurring that line and allowing more, for lack of a better word, like manufacturers to come into Etsy as long as they go through the process of vetting. And because of that, it hurts your ranking when the marketplace is more crowded, and it also encourages price wars where people are competing on prices for items that are similar, which really hurt the makers who are making everything by hand.
So at the end of the day, it's kind of like a race to the bottom, which is not...
It can be.
Yeah, which is not a party you want to be part of.
No, you want to be a race to the top.
Yeah, so what's the solution? The solution that we're proposing is that you should diversify your sales channels and start your own e-commerce site with either an e-commerce platform like Shopify or Squarespace. So what is an e-commerce platform? Let's get into that. An e-commerce platform allows you to set up and run an online store on your own domain, while the e-commerce platform handles all the technical infrastructure and support needed. Also, if you have any issues with the platform, they provide customer support to you, the business. What your own domain means is, for example, www.easysundayclub.com or www.yourbusiness.com. And people can go directly to your site on this e-commerce platform. The great thing about it is that you have control over your own branding, inventory, and what you want to sell. You can sell everything from handmade goods to manufacturing goods. You can also drive repeat customers from Etsy to your site. You can still maintain Etsy as a marketing channel with your top selling items, and then you can funnel those customers over to your e-commerce platform site. The bad thing about an e-commerce site is that you have to do more marketing to direct traffic to your site. No one knows if your site even exists, or no one can go to some place to search for the items that you sell on your shop. That's why you should still maintain your presence on Etsy, but also you would have to invest more in marketing, either on Instagram, Facebook, or other platforms, or in person for people to actually go to your site and purchase things. Also, people are going to have to do a separate account or login for, in some cases, to purchase your goods. So instead of using their Etsy account, they would maybe have to make their own account, and that may be an additional barrier for them. And let's talk about the fees. There's monthly hosting fees, and they start at about the mid-20s. So I know Shopify, for example, is around $29 a month, and there are also credit card transaction fees. So this isn't a play. This is not a play to save money or for your own convenience. It's more of a play to have your own store and shop and to expand beyond what Etsy can provide. I just wanted to talk about a little bit of our experience and what we went through in order to make these decisions of Etsy and moving over to our own e-commerce platform. When Cathy first started off as an artist, we didn't know how long she would do it for or how many products she wanted to sell. So Etsy was the lowest barrier to entry to just get her art up there to sell. So we started an Etsy account and we uploaded a couple things, and it allowed her customers and her followers to start to go to a place to buy her things. Also allowed people to find her art for the first time.
And after a while, because I was doing most of the marketing in the beginning on Instagram, I realized that I was sending these people who eventually started off with being friends and family, but eventually were strangers that follow my work. I was sending them to basically someone else's website, which is what Etsy was. And you could be looking at my art, but at the bottom of the page, there will be, suggested items of other artists' work. And that to me wasn't really great experience, especially since I put in all the effort of sending traffic to Etsy. So that was one of the catalysts that made me want to switch. And we switched before I was ready. I remember the first holiday season, we had our website on Shopify, and I only made maybe a couple sales, and most of my sales were still on Etsy. And it was not great.
So Cathy could kind of see into the future that she was outgrowing Etsy and wanted her own branding. So we had to go and do the research of how do we make our own website and how much does it cost. So we looked at the options between Shopify and Square, which we'll get into in the next video. But ultimately we decided to go with Shopify. We learned how to make the website using the templates. And then I had to spend an afternoon in a coffee shop, 2 afternoons, uploading all of our art from Etsy to Shopify and figuring out a new workflow on how to manage sales from that site to fulfill them to customers. Now, a couple years later, we have a more established site. Our customers know to go directly there to purchase them. And our Etsy sales have continued to go down, but it's okay because we don't rely on that channel. Etsy sales going down isn't something that's affecting us. It's affecting artists all throughout Etsy, established artists, because of the reasons we mentioned before about the search algorithm changing. Etsy as a company seems to be going through a lot of corporate strife on what their identity is, and that's been affecting the sellers and makers on the site.
Yeah, so it was a lot easier to put something up on Etsy and get it sold 10 years ago, and plenty of makers are making their sole online sales income from Etsy. But in 2019, that's definitely not the case anymore. I wouldn't say that we've done everything we could to maximize our sales on Etsy. We've kind of kept it on autopilot, sort of like fish bait. But even having not put in more or less effort year over year, we noticed that our sales has gone down despite me having a larger selection of goods.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a surefire sign that the platform is not reliable as a sole online channel.
Yep. So thank you for joining us for this video. We will be creating another video that compares Shopify and Squarespace. So please subscribe and continue to support us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.